guest episodes, and I have with me Louise McDonnell. Louise is a social media strategist, four-time best-selling author, and founder of the Sell on Social. On top of that, Louise trained over 25,000 people since she started. Louise, you're very welcome to the show. I wonder, do you want to share with us a little bit about this journey? You started your digital marketing business in 2009, which in internet years is a long time ago.
Yeah, so I might even go a little bit further back than that. So I studied marketing in college. And I even remember, the first few months when I was in college, and people would say to you, "Oh, what are you studying?" When you go home, and they'd say marketing, and I'd say marketing, and they'd go, "Oh, okay, advertising, is it?" And I suppose I started to realize from a very early time that people really don't understand what marketing is. And so they kind of try to think, okay, marketing is advertising, so maybe she's studying advertising. And actually, that always kind of stood out to me when I was even in college. And to this day, I believe it's still a thing. People, I don't think, really truly understand what marketing is and the difference between marketing and advertising. So that's kind of just a very early intro that a lot of what you'll hear me talk about comes from a marketing perspective. So I truly believe that the traditional marketing concepts that I learned all those years ago in college are, they're so relevant, and people seem to think that social media marketing is about social media, whereas in fact, it's about marketing. So yes, marketing is where my background in. And then one of my earliest jobs that I got, Roberta, was in a company called EDI Factory. And EDI Factory, at the time when I got the job, it was pre-internet. It was like nobody had access to the internet in our flats where we lived in Dublin. And that might be hard to believe, and maybe I'm sounding like a dinosaur when I say that. But so when I got this job, when I went for this interview in this company, and it was actually somebody had handed me a typed up newsletter from one of the universities with graduate positions typed up on it and was handed around to the students. That's how I found out about the job. I went for the interview, not really knowing what the company was about. I got the job not really knowing what the company was about. And I just presumed it was a factory because it was called EDI Factory. And I was so green that I didn't even cop on like that. The job was in city centre in Dublin. Like, I don't know where I thought the factory was going to actually be. So I remember walking in on the first day and going, "Where's the factory?" And it was like, "Oh no, EDI is like electronic data interchange." And I seemed to walk into this world of, I didn't have a clue what was going on, because everybody in the company was coding or was in tech, and I was the only female, and I didn't really have a clue what was going on. So the joke was among my friend group, like, "Have you figured out what the company do yet, Louise?" So and it took me a while, and I found it, to be honest, I found it really hard. It was a really hard position because like the internet and doing business online, it wasn't a thing, and nobody was talking about it, and it felt very tech, and it felt very difficult. Anyhow, I stayed there and I worked there for a number of years, and what I found was I have a love for really techie things, and I really love kind of what I found was that their marketing literature was double Dutch, like nobody could understand it, including me or including the customers. And what I found was that I had an aptitude to be able to understand the tech stuff, but to be able to write about it in a way that the clients and prospective customers understood it. So I was able to write it with that marketing hat on. And then I suppose that's what I continued to do all throughout my career. So yes, I started my business in 2009 at the height of the recession in Ireland. The economy was falling apart. I was actually made redundant. That's why I started my business. I always wanted to start a business, but there was never a right time. I was always saving to get married, or saving to build a house, or saving. I
Mhm.
had twins at the time. I was saving to have my twins.
Wow.
And then, my hand was put, the card was dealt, and I was made redundant on my birthday. And I remember thinking in 2009, well, yes, I have twins at home and they're very young, but I have lots of marketing experience, and I have lots of marketing experience in this new world which was beginning to emerge, was the whole area of digital marketing, social media. And so I started my business, and I trained businesses all over Ireland, mostly the west coast, western seaboard, up and down the western side of the country. And then I started moving online. So that's where the numbers really started to kick in, where, you could deliver a training course. People to this day are still buying courses that I have published on various different sites from years and years ago. So I started my business training, and then we moved in, and people came to me then and said, "Well, I don't want to know how to do it. I want you to do it for me." So that's where my agency started. So I have an agency now with a team of people who work for me. And then I have a coaching academy. So I do an 8-week program where business people who want to know how to create a social selling system for themselves can come and go through my program, and they can do it for themselves. It works really well. It gets great results. And then I've just launched my new digital marketing platform, Sell on Social. So that's a little background on me.
Yeah, that's been quite a journey, Louise. And like, I just want to pick on the fact that you built this business in 2009 in Sligo. Like, it's not that you were kind of like in Dublin or in London or in a bigger capital. You were on the west coast of Ireland. How was it to find clients? Was it easy? Do you remember your first client or the first person you trained?
That's a great question, because I worked in Dublin for years, and I worked in the industry that I was in the whole area of e-commerce and EDI. And so by the time that I decided I wanted to get out of Dublin, I was getting headhunted all the time by companies who wanted, because I had the experience that they were looking for. We had made, myself and my husband, who he's my boyfriend at the time, had made the decision that we didn't want to live in Dublin, because I loved Dublin. It was great fun. But once all our friends started to leave there, we just didn't have a base of people that we knew. We decided we wanted to move back home to like Enniscrone, County Sligo, in the northwest of the country. And I remember my husband set up his own business in painting and decorating. And once he set up his business, he literally won contracts, and this was in the Celtic Tiger. He moved home pretty much straight away. And I said, well, I'll move home when I get a job. So I remember I am at the time in Dublin, it was booming. Like, every time that you would go out to visit a new client, you possibly were going to a new industrial estate, and it was all the buildings were new, and there was muck everywhere because we hadn't even built the footpaths yet and all of that. And then I remember I said, oh, I know what I'll do. I'll ring Enterprise Ireland, and I'll ring the IDA, and I'll see, can I get a list of all the startups in Sligo and Mayo? Because I live quite near to Mayo. So I rang them up. And they said, oh, we haven't had a startup here in 3 years. And I remember going, holy goodness, how am I going to get a job? So I looked and looked and looked. It took me 9 months to find a job to apply for. And I took a job as CEO of the Chamber of Commerce in Ballina. I worked there for 7 years, and I left there, and I was in the next company, which I was head of marketing and PR, when I knew the writing was on the wall. Like, so this company that I was in was depending on new builds. It was depending on new builds. It was depending on the construction sector, and it was depending on energy efficiency certificates. And if you can remember back to the 2009, there was nothing being built, and there was nobody selling or buying. So I kind of knew for a while that, like, it was going to be very difficult for them to sustain the business at the level that they were. So in the background, I said, okay, I had somebody to mind the kids for 2 days, the twins, and I was working 2.5 days. So I had half a day. So I decided in that half a day that I would start getting clients and working for them independently. So at least I would have a little bit of a portfolio built up. So I was very fortunate that I got some work with a local B&B and a bed and breakfast. I got some work with a local activity centre, and I think I was volunteering on the local destination marketing group. So I had like 3 examples of the tourism sector where I was doing some very small work for them, but I had started. And then I remember this opportunity came up with Fáilte Ireland, the Irish Tourism Board, and they were looking for marketing mentors to go on their e-marketing panel. And the application process was grueling, and they wanted 3 examples of clients you had worked with. Well, I only had 3 examples. That's all I had on my whole entire portfolio. But I had lots of experience besides, So I remember I did put the application together, and I gave it to my mother, and I said, would you mind posting that for me? It has to go in by this date. And she went up to the post office, and they said, well, what's the value of the package? And she was like, my life if it doesn't get there. So I was very fortunate that I won that contract.
Very
Um,
good.
I worked with Culture Ireland. It was a 3-year contract. I worked with them for 3 years, and that really helped me establish my business. And I ended up taking somebody on before the end of the 3 years, just to help with all the demand that there was. So yeah,
Very good. Such a
yeah. So
rich story and journey you have.
yeah, but I suppose to your point, I remember the moment that I was made redundant on the morning of my birthday when the economy was falling apart. I think, I was fully aware of how rural my business is. Like, I live, just near Enniscrone in County Sligo. And I think one of the things that came from the pandemic, which was a really positive thing, was that it really did open up the opportunity for people to be able to run their businesses from any, like I have clients all over the world. And initially, when I started my business, I did find it difficult to find people who wanted to work in the area I wanted them to work in near my business. And then during COVID, it just became obvious that it didn't matter where my team were because we were all working remotely anyhow. And so I now have my business. I live where I want to live, and I have a remote team who work for me where they want to live. And we meet every day, all day on Zoom and have the chats and get on. And my business works perfectly well.
And this is not a planned question, but I'm curious to know, Louise, was always your plan to have a team? And how was that transition from being just yourself owning the business to, managing other people? Because that brings a different layer of responsibility to your role as a founder. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that then the marketing tasks are probably handed over to your team and you're more kind of like in a managing position. So how do you feel about that? And is that the case?
Yeah. So for a long time, I decided I didn't want to have a team. So I had a small team, and I said I just was somebody supporting me, and that was it. And then when businesses started to approach me to say, like, literally, I don't want you to show me. I want you to do this for me. I don't have time. I don't want to learn. I used to push back and go, no, I don't want to do it. No, I have no interest. No, no, no. And then what happened was one day a girl approached me, and she was moving to the area, and she said, I'd really like to work with you. And I just looked down through her CV and I went, actually, this girl would fit in really well with what I'm doing. And so I, gave her a job. I started to grow the agency, and then COVID hit, and then she couldn't even work with me. She was working remotely, and that's when I thought, oh, hang on, I can just take on other people and get them to work remotely with me. So I don't mind the managing people because, in the various jobs that I had, I always managed teams of people anyhow. So managing people wasn't an issue for me. And working remotely, it just worked. It was just COVID kind of gave us the opportunity to see that, yes, this does actually work. Even if you're on a Zoom with somebody and they're 4 or 5 kilometers away, it doesn't matter if they're 4 kilometers away or 400 kilometers away, it's the same difference. How does it work now? So in the agency, I'm very much the big thinker, the strategy thinker. I like to think about things differently. I like to come up with, like, I love coming up with different ideas, and I love kind of like just challenging the status quo and doing things a little bit differently. And I have a team which really complement me. So like Karen, who works and she's head of my agency, she's real detail orientated. She'll take all my ideas and she will implement them, possibly in a better way than I would implement them, because I just love the ideas and the innovation and the strategy. So I don't have to get caught up on the implementation, and she'll take it and she'll filter it out to the rest of our team to create the content and schedule. So it works really well because it just means that I get to do what I like to do, and I have a team of
Okay.
people that support me in that.
Okay, that's very good. Okay, so now moving on a little bit more on the part that you teach people and that you bring your expertise. You talk about businesses missing leads because they don't have a lead generation system. What does that system actually look like in practice, and what are the things that most people are skipping when it comes to lead generation?
Yeah, so I would say a very high percentage of businesses that I work with, whether that's through my coaching academy or through our agency, there's a few things. They think that most people think that their messaging is good enough, and most people's messaging, this, isn't. So you could ask, like, what's your marketing messaging like? And they're like, yeah, no, it's pretty good. And then you can take people at their face value, and then you start to work with them maybe in your agency, and then you realize that no, it hasn't been what it needed to be. And even in my coaching academy, people come in because they want, like, the goal of the 8-week program is to get them using social media and actually getting leads from it, from getting sales and leads from it, not just using it to grow awareness. And so people come in and that's what they want. But we start and we get everybody to go through the same process. And so we start with the messaging, the marketing messaging, and 99% of the time people are having aha moments and real moments of realization that, like, their marketing has been, like, quite weak in terms of its messaging. And no matter what you do in your social media content, if your messaging is weak, then everything, it's the foundation, and everything else that you build on that is going to be weak if the foundations are weak. So lead generation is another area that businesses, I don't know, they just don't think it's important. Or so people will either have some kind of a lead generation tool. Maybe they might have a guide, or they may have some kind of a free download or a freebie in some shape or form. But generally, they haven't connected that lead magnet directly to the core offer of what they're selling. So it's the core service they're selling. So generally the lead magnets are not attracting the right people, or they're not attracting anyone, or they're not doing anything. Nothing's happening. Nothing's coming from the lead magnet. So first of all, if you don't have a system for generating leads, well, you're not going to get leads. The only people that you're going to get are people who reach out directly to you. So having a lead generation system means that you're turning the people that you've nurtured on your social media you're getting them to have a conversation. You're moving them to the next stage, because it's very unusual, especially if you're selling a service, and if it's a high ticket service, it's very unusual that somebody will just reach out to you on social media and say, oh, I want to spend a few €1,000 with you. Very unusual.
Yeah.
If they're going to spend a few €1,000, you're going to have maybe at least one sales conversation with them. And the whole idea of the lead magnet is that it leads them into the sales conversation. So not having a lead magnet, the lead magnet not being aligned with the company's core offer is another problem. Having an ineffective lead magnet, or just not spending time thinking about how to populate people into that lead magnet. They're the issues that I see. And so until you have that sorted, you're always going to be limited in the number of leads that you generate from social media. So that's an area that is generally an issue for people. Another thing is, when people show up consistently on social media, on message, that also moves the dial for them as well. So I have seen that work incredibly well for our clients, that when they
On,
start showing up,
you
yeah.
mean showing up on direct message?
No, I mean showing up on with clarity of their messaging, of clarity of what they're saying. That also does move the dial for people as well. So that has an impact.
Yeah. So from what I get, it's kind of like having a very strong funnel from the lead generation up to nurturing and warming up that lead up until get the sales conversation and eventually book the project or the service. And like when it comes to lead generation, are freebies still a thing? I know there's a lot of opinions about freebies and lead generation generators people can download from websites and all of that. Are those still working, or what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so that would be what I would be teaching people to create, both on my coaching programs and on my online platform, is that the whole idea is that if somebody doesn't, on social media, what you want to do is bring people into your world and get them having a conversation with you in the shortest period of time possible. So somebody could connect with you on social media, and they could be watching you for years, and then eventually they decide to reach out. But ultimately what you want to do is speed up that process so that you get new leads in and you nurture them and you're having the conversation in the shortest time period possible. So the easiest way for somebody to enter your world is if the only thing that they need to give you is their email address. So they're opting in. Yes, they understand they're opting in. So whatever that lead magnet is, it has to be appealing enough to your ideal customer that they want it. Like it has to be something that they absolutely want. Now that's the challenge for you as the marketing, as the marketers. What can you create that is going to be absolutely 100% compelling for your ideal customer, that they say, well, I'm going to give up my email address because I want this piece of information. It can be a piece of information. It could be an assessment. It could be a free masterclass. It could be a webinar. It's something that, but they want. And again, the mistake that people tend to make when they're creating lead magnets is that they're nearly creating something which is like an intake, like it's written from the perspective of the business, not necessarily written from the perspective of the prospect. Freebies work. If your freebie isn't working, there's something wrong with it. That's the problem. So it has to be compelling. It has to be written with the ideal customer in mind. They have to be so persuaded that they absolutely want it and need it. And then, then you nurture them after that. But it's that initial moment that gets their attention, and that comes down to your copywriting skills. That comes down to how well you understand what's your ideal customer, what they're worried about, what makes them tick, what's going to trigger them. So that's down to your copywriting, which is all part of marketing. And then it's part of the content itself and how well it leads to your core offer. That's part of identifying your core offer and the transformation that it promises or guarantees. So all of these things are things that will make somebody take action.
Yeah. And that leads us to Sell on Social, your platform, which is, and I can say this by my own experience because I've been trying it and I just couldn't believe it. It's just so powerful. Like there's so much to it. Do you want to tell us, Louise, more about the platform? What was that moment where you think, oh, I'm going to build this?
Yeah, so I've been running coaching programs for years, and there's been various iterations of them, And the challenge that I always have is that I think if a program goes on too long, people, find it hard to maintain, have the time, and all of that. And what I found was with the introduction of AI, so about 2 years ago, I love AI and have totally embraced it. And what I found was about 2 years ago, I figured out that once I had AI, that I could speed up the time frame it took to get people through my program. So what initially would have taken me possibly about 8 months to get somebody through, to get them to complete all the tasks that I wanted them to complete to build their social selling system, I got it down to 8 weeks, and that was with the aid of AI. So I could give, when people come into my workshops, as in my coaching calls, they're working sessions. And I get people to answer specific questions, and then I would give them the prompts, and they would take the prompts to go with the answers, and they would generate, a part of their social selling system. And what I found is that it worked incredibly well. So one person might be using ChatGPT, somebody else might be using Gemini, somebody else might be using Claude. It didn't really matter. They'd all do the same thing. But one of the issues that I found about doing that was that, like in week one, we identify the core messages. So we identify like the strategic brand framework for the client. And there's some amazing things that come out of that first week that blow people away. And what I found was then when it came to writing their sales pages or their opt-in pages or their emails, that they weren't using. So they had forgotten what they had covered earlier on in the program. They weren't using that messaging consistently. And so it occurred to me that if I could build a platform which completely mirrored my coaching program, which I know works and gets amazing results, and that instead of giving people the prompts themselves, that if when they answered the questions, the prompts were engineered into the system, that the system then would generate the marketing messages, the marketing assets on behalf of the individual. So it meant that people who are not marketing experts in any shape or form just needed to be able to answer the very straightforward questions that I know that if I have the answers to these questions for people, that I can generate their social selling system, their marketing assets, everything for them. But the beauty about the program, about the platform, is that once you plug in, what makes you unique, what makes you different, what you can say that nobody else can say, the system will never forget it. So we will always remember that when it's writing a sales page, an email, or social media content on behalf of the person. So it will always remember what's unique about the individual. It will always remember who they're targeting, keeps them awake at night, what triggers them, what's going to make them take action. And then, as I said, like the professional copywriting, all of that That's all built into the system. So you give the answers to the system, and the system then generates all your marketing for you. So it'll generate like a complete month's worth of social media content in a few minutes. But it's not like AI, lazy slop. It's really amazing content built around your stories, your advice, and your social proof. And it'll build a sales page for you in minutes, which I've seen people be just been completely blown away. And they're like, oh my God, I can copy and paste that. Or it'll build like a 6 email journey and a lead generation system, which is linked to your core offer, your core service. And it'll build it for you in a few minutes once you have plugged in all the answers. So it's literally a one-stop shop, a plug and play for everything you need in your marketing if you're selling a professional service or a high-level product online.
Wow, that's so impressive, Louise. Like as I said, I tried it and it is everything that you said and more. Like, I think people actually need to experience it for themselves. And I know myself, I'm not a copywriter. I'm not a marketing specialist. I'm a designer. So I do struggle with words. And I think having a tool like the one that you created, it's going to help a lot more people creating their marketing and their lead generation. So well done.
No, thank
I know that you're offering our listeners a 30-minute strategy call.
Yeah, so if they want to go ahead and they can try out the system for free. They can go on and they can create what I call a story-driven insight post. It's the best performing content at the moment on social media, whether you're using LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram. It will work on all the platforms. So if they want to go to, I know you'll be giving them a link, but if they want to go and sell on social, go to the homepage and just start there. And anyone who signs up as a result of listening to this, I'll be very happy to sit down and give them a strategy call with that.
Very good. I'm just wondering if anyone that is working with you, not on the platform, but is working with you one on one, what is the first thing? And I think I know the answer, but I'm going to ask you anyway. What is the first thing that you look to have fixed first, or you look to see if it's in place?
Yeah, so it's all around the messaging. So when I start to work with someone, um, yeah, you're right. It's all about the marketing, how we communicate with our marketing messages. So first thing I will do is I will really get an understanding of who the person is, what makes them unique. Usually they have forgotten. We pull that out of them. Then we focus on the ideal customer, and then we focus on what the transformation they're offering that ideal customer. And that helps them define their core offer. So that's the foundation. Your foundation is your marketing messaging. Your lead generation is what will get you those leads and nurture those leads. And then your social media content creation is what's going to get you awareness. And you need all three things.
Ask you is so, Louise, what is next? So you have the books, you have the platform, you have the team, the program. What's next in the cards for you?
So the platform is really like it's in its infancy. So my whole focus for the foreseeable future will be scaling that, because I want to make it as accessible to as many people as possible. The platform, you can do it, you can do it yourself. You can go on there and you can start and you can work your way through it. So that's what I like about it. It makes it easy for people who are maybe challenged by, like, I know we've some people on the platform who tell me that they have writing differences, they have dyslexia or they have different issues, and so writing or expressing themselves in a way that they can just copy and paste and use it sometimes is a bit difficult. So the system absolutely solves the problem for them. So, and I know we're working with some like nonprofits as well. So I just want to get the platform out to as many places as possible. So again, call out there if there's anybody out there who wants to be a reseller or to work with us on a license basis. That's what we're looking at the moment. So it's, this just opens it up. It just makes it easy. It makes marketing easy. And back to how I started the story at the very beginning, people still to this day don't really understand what marketing is. They still think, oh, marketing is advertising. And it's not. It's so much more than that. It's solving that problem that I found on the first day in college when people were like, what do you do? Marketing. All right, advertising. No. So marketing is a bit different. This makes marketing easy and it makes it accessible.
Yeah. It's a bit like when I say I'm a graphic designer, people are, oh, you must be very good at drawing. Well, not necessarily. It's quite different. So I get the misunderstanding. It's been such a pleasure to chat with you. Where can people find you if they want to connect with you and learn more about what you're doing?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn. You'll find me under Louise McDonnell, CDONNELL. You'll also find me, my corporate website is sellonsocial.media, and then my new platform is Sell on Social.
I'll make sure to include all those links in the show notes. Is there any message you want to leave for our listeners before we close?
No, I suppose people always seem to be waiting. I don't know if you ever find that. I find that people are going, oh, I'll start on my social media when I have my website done. I'll start my social media when I'm ready to do this. I will say, like, it takes time to grow awareness and it takes time to build a warm audience. So don't wait, even if you're at the beginning of your journey, or sometimes you find people are transitioning between one career and another. Don't wait till you think you're ready. Start, bring people on the journey with you. And because then by the time that you're ready for transactions, they already are warm and ready to take action. So that would be my thing. So lots of people I think out there are on the outside looking in. Only 1.5% of people who use LinkedIn create content. And there's so many senior people who have so much experience and so many stories they could tell, and they just don't know where to start. So don't start, don't wait. Start is my action, is my and again, that's what the platform does. It just gives you that tool to be able to plug in, the things you know about yourself and your client, and create those marketing assets really easily.
Yeah, that's a great message. And I totally agree. I think done is better than perfect because we never completely have it all figured out. I speak by my experience. Like the business and the brand is always evolving and growing and going in different directions. So if I was waiting for the perfect day to sit down and create everything, like there's a perfect day now and there's a perfect day next month, and in a 6 months probably it's going to be different. So yeah, it's better to just tackle it and just go with it and grow as long as we go as well.
Exactly, exactly. Well, thank you so much for today. This has been brilliant.
Thank you so much, Louise, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.
Bye bye.